My name is Tracy, she, her pronouns. I created a short Zoom film with Sal, who was on my crew, that was called Waiting for Dad. And it was inspired by me moving home when my dad got a stroke 5 years ago. And the pandemic, actually. I wanted to capture the angst I was feeling in having to take care of my family in that way. My self obligation to be home, caretake for my aging and disabled sick father, while grieving in the middle of the pandemic, and processing all that came with it. And also, there were just like a lot of funny and cute snippets of my dad walking my dog, doing dishes, and my dad just kind of being funny and senile and finding like lightheartedness to that I wanted to share with the world. And through the QTViệt Circle process, I think I just really found it as a space to heal myself. And I knew that producing this art would be a healing process and a healing product. So as much as of a chore it was to create the art sometimes, like I knew I had to go through the ebbs and flows of struggling with art to make it. And now that he's progressively gotten sicker, I find so much like treasure in having produced that, because like now it's an archive of who my dad was before he got hospitalized just recently. And so I'm very thankful for that.
I got goosebumps. I
Me
was like,
too.
oh my God. I'll just introduce myself first and then like have a follow-up comment. My name is Sal. I use they them pronouns. I didn't make any art this week, but I helped support Tracy and the whole QTViệt collective with the back end tech stuff with Leon, and just putting and curating, editing, and making sure things run smoothly. But I remember Tracy. I think this was in the beginning of that time. Was it last year? Last year,
Yeah.
right? Last year.
Over a year ago.
Yeah, and you were telling me about your relationship with your dad. We're besties, by the way. Number one bestie in Bay. Sorry, Noah. And like, I just remember you telling me this story, and I was like, holy fuck, you need to write this. And you and I, as an Aries, me a Virgo, I know we're perfectionists, but like in a time where we were so limited resources, is it safe to film? Is it safe to film on set with a big crew or not? And really getting really creative on how to tell your story. So I'm just wanted to say I'm so incredibly proud of you for leaning in and trusting your artistry, because you're always supporting so many people's work. But like it was really amazing to be able to support your vision.
Yeah, I feel like you saw it when it was like a playwright, and then it was like a full-on short narrative film production, and then we had to just settle with a Zoom production, like there's so many iterations of it. And yeah, Sal was there all the way helping me like, revise the script, revise the production quality, like just figuring out like how to put it out there. And sometimes when I forgot something, Sal would be like, didn't you say this one time, like casually in a conversation? I'd be like, oh yeah, I forgot that element of my own story. And Sal would be like that sounding board for me. So it's amazing to work with your bestie, because like, my story just as much as me, and you're like part of my story. So like you really helped me tell it too. Thank you.
Mm.
Are you crying?
No.
I'm getting goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps too, because I remember struggling with writing pieces about my mom, and I remember you were sharing that in the beginnings of the struggle too. And I remember there was a meeting when you said something to the effect of like, I don't think I would have been able to write this if we didn't meet together. Like if we didn't get together, like it wouldn't have happened. And I felt the exact same way for my mom's piece. So yeah, my name is Hai, and I wrote. I mean, I essentially wanted to help. I wanted to memorialize my mom in some way who passed, in 2018. And I I didn't know quite how, and um, uh, all up in the 2 or 3 years before she passed, I moved down to SoCal to help take care of her. And in those years, we didn't know quite when she was going to pass. But I visited her at least I try to visit her at least every weekend. And in those weekends, we would be growing food and gardening and cooking a lot. And I started becoming semi-obsessed with asking her questions about her life, and then always had follow-up questions about food, like what was your boat story, and like what were you eating, or in the refugee camps, like what were you cooking, or when you came over to Iowa, where I was born, like what was the food like? Were you cooking Viet food, or were you eating Viet food? And I think I was obsessed partly because I didn't. It was a period in my life of taking care of her where I wanted to know about her beyond just her being my mom, and I wanted to know about her as a human, because at that time she really let go of a lot of worry, and I saw her as someone who was actually really playful and really joyful, and someone who like wanted to try to worry less. And I started to get to know her in a different way. And you know, those a lot of those weekends, like I kind of grew up with her being a kitchen top, and she was just so like she was so like adamant she was about like things being a certain way and things looking a certain way. And the you know, it was a time where she actually physically couldn't cook as much as she used to. And so that was when I started to cook with her, and do a lot of the things growing up that I didn't really get a chance to do with her. And the piece is essentially one of the stories that I learned about her. And it's called Jabong Mea, which is my mom's jabong, which is in Viet, it's a pork or chicken or anything dried and made into a floss. And it was the last thing that she cooked before she left Vietnam, before she left as a boat person with my brother. And essentially, that's the dish that she thinks that allowed them to survive on the boat a week out into sea. And that was right when a boat picked up them before I was born, after being in refugee camps. And so the piece was like kind of mini vignettes of mini like food narratives of my life growing up with that dish. First, you know, her making it as a child, and we go to Vegas and do road trips together with our family. And um, then her starting to buy jabong because she started to work 2 jobs, and me starting to notice that difference. And then the last story of her telling me about that dish when she had cancer. And it ended up with me writing a love letter to her, and asking like, what does it mean to like cook a dish that you never had a chance to cook with your mom or your family? And like, how do you hold on to memory of your family and memory of your loved ones when you know, they might have promised you that that you'll cook with them, or you'll make that dish together, but then but they pass. And so this art piece was part recollecting not just the stories, but actually trying to make that dish, and me like struggling making it like 6 times before what you see in the piece is the 6th time that I finally make it without any hacks, without any like shortcuts. And that's essentially what came out of that piece. And how do you essentially me learning to that despite all the struggles and challenges that her her practicing that survival and her practicing so much love care was her expressions of love, even though I never really accepted those when I was younger. So lâu quá, lâu quá nói nhiều quá.
Oh, trà bom bom trà bom. I love the way you created it. It was so multifaceted piece. Cooking and playing words and poetry. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and even like on the back end, just seeing like your vision be like a seed and collectively you're watering it in front of us and it was having different iterations and growing. And it was really cool because I just love the way that even in our like artist circle, we would have these like workshops on doing how to draw or like moving and cooking, things like that. The way that you lean into like finding home and going back into your roots is like through cooking, and you like time travel with your mom's food and you access her through that, and it's just so beautiful to witness how you're just every time you talk, every single time I'm like heart eyes, I'm like wow, my friends are so poetic, and it's just beautiful to see it come together in this beautiful piece. So thank you for gifting that to us to witness.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you. Yeah, how has it can I actually, before we get into like how we're feeling now about the pieces, I'm curious, like I have some like technical technical questions about the piece. Like the part when Tracy, you're like you're I don't know the terms, but you're like talking to the insurance agent and your dad is just like back there hanging out. Was that just like was your dad naturally just hanging out, or were you like
That's like where he usually sits every day. Every day he sits there for hours watching TV. And I knew I wanted him in the frame. At first, it was going to be somewhere else or someone else's house. I was like, no, we got to do it in my house because it looks more Asian. And I want my dad in the backdrop. And so I was like, bah, I'm going to do like a project, okay? And he like doesn't understand what we're doing. And then as we're talking about it, Noah's in the background and Noah's filming the angle of him and my dad. I made him wear headphones, right? And then at one point, my dad takes off his headphones. He's like, what the? Are they talking about me? He's just like staring at me. He's like, put the headphone back on. He takes it back off. Like, wait a minute. He's like suspicious, right? And then Noah sends me the video after. I'm like, oh my God, he knows I'm talking shit about him. The whole piece is about him dying, like waiting for him to die. He knows I'm waiting for him to die. Yeah, but that's a funny piece. But yeah, he was meant to be there. And whether or not he consented to it, I guess I might have tricked him. But he was meant to be part of the backdrop.
Yeah, and even on a technical standpoint, I remember Leon and I are on sound, so we're having like labs or like
Yeah.
professional audio equipment, and you can just hear him wrestle and like Noah being like, "Oh no, quiet on the set."
Yeah. Like he's getting up, and everyone pauses. Like, wait, like Dad, sit down, and he'll sit back down. Like stop moving. And literally, in one of the scenes, he actually does get up and leaves.
It worked.
Yeah.
amazing, amazing. Yeah, because I was wondering how staged that was, and I'm like, this looks like my dad on the couch, just like chilling.
Well, no, we were planning it. I was worried from a production standpoint. Like, there's no way I can use my dad as a main character. I had to find a talent actor who can act as an old man. I wanted like it very scripted. I wanted to direct it. I needed the character to be just right. But at the same time, no one could really play my dad unless it was my dad. So I'm really glad the way it turned out. It kind of became like this like homemade montage video feel because that was the essence of him. And I was debating for a while, like, how do I get the essence of my dad with a quality production? It can't just be my cell phone photos and cell phone videos, but it ended up being my cell phone videos. So, yeah, I liked how it turned out.
And it's cool kind of how you wrote it too. Like you wrote it because if you did bring in actor, you're kind of trying to write as if you're speaking for him, but this was all your
Um,
experience as
Mm-mm.
the daughter, refugee child, the child of refugee parents,
mm,
and it was cool to see you really lean into the honesty of
Mm-hmm.
frustration, um,
Yeah.
like hardship, all of those layers in that conversation that was for real with the insurance agent, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
was all. It was like you wrote it, but also like this
mm.
is what is your real lived experience.
Speaking of insurance agent, she texted me today because she's following what's happening with my dad, and she, just giving me like kind thoughts. But it's such a full circle, right? Because she remembers what it was like to talk about my dad during that time, and now she's following along, like, you know, seeing that we talked about his death while we're talking about life insurance. Um, but anyway, he's not passed yet. And what this piece means for me today, like, so I was able to submit my film for a couple of screenings. Like there was two film screenings that I went through, so I got more audience feedback.
Yeah,
And
what are the people saying, Tracy?
What are the fans saying?
What
A lot
are
of
the
hopes
peeps
for the first half.
saying?
We had to make 2 lines.
but okay, it was like tight. Okay, be humble. No, it was a modest screening, and a lot of the resounding sentiment was, "Thank you for telling a story I didn't know I needed because so many people relate to it." And what I'm learning is like I talk about death very matter of factly, but also I think in Vietnamese culture, death is much more part of our lives, right? Like we bury our family in our backyards. In Vietnam, there's cemeteries everywhere, in the rice paddies, in the dragon fruit paddies. The cemetery is part of our lives. And even the bones, right? Like there's so much ritual around bones, and there's death anniversaries every year. And so like when I realized when I'm talking about death, so many people relate to it easily because everyone is going to experience death, grief, but because we as American Asian Americans, it's so silenced, it's so ostracized and stigmatized, and people go through it so alone. And so when I talk about like my piece is waiting for dad, and the rest of that sentence is waiting for my dad to die, and to this very day, now that he's hospitalized and even more sick, it still feels like I'm waiting for him to die. And it's like a whole nother box of feelings and emotions. And I'm also like fighting for him to live at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But, like even my mom, she goes to temple and she's like, I'm good. It's like we talk about it so bluntly because we expect our elders to die. And when they die, we have a ritual for them. So she's waiting for him to die because she's about to embark on a spiritual ritual for him. She's ready for the monk ceremony. She's ready for the funeral. She's ready for all the setup because that is just as important as his life. And so there's something about just breaking that ice and breaking that wall about our fear around death, or like our sadness around death, but also like reclaiming that death is so much a part of us that it's okay to talk about it. Like that's like the film has empowered me to be even more vocal about it because so many people keep reflecting back to me like I feel the same way. I'm like, wow, if we're all feeling the same way, why are we talking about it? Why is it such a invisible conversation? um
Mm.
yeah, so that's how I feel about my piece today. I feel a lot of things about my piece today, but we're a little short on time.
No, Tracy, I resonate with that 1,000%. I think growing up, it was interesting because I grew up Catholic, so like um uh death death was like all around us. It was in our family, but I think that there's such a stigma around death as growing up in America. And so I think that like we showcased that piece 2000 May 2021, and my mom passed August 2018. And so it took me that long to um like I think for me what I learned is that I needed this process. I needed to create my own honoring and my own ritual for my mom. Like I like the week that my mom passed, it was very like there were rituals, but it was very Catholic and it was very staged. And you know, I don't think it's quite like any, I don't think it's like everyone's like Viet experience. But I think that my dad had like a schedule, and we had definitely had to figure out exactly, there was already a schedule for how my mom was going to pass. And I think for in some ways that was, it felt great for my dad and it felt great for her, like other like immediate and extended family members to go through that. But I never quite felt like I could grieve during that time. And so that piece was, you know, like as you were saying, Sally, just like me connecting with her around our experiences cooking and those stories that I got to learn from her was my chance to honor and memorialize her. And I think that's why I cried so much at the showcase, because it was really the first one of the first times that that like the waves of grief really got to me. Like I kind of suppressed that grief when my mom passed, because like as the child of the, like as the child of the parent, like I went through so much shit. Like I just had to like, there was so much protocol that happened in the church. And so I never really had to, I really had never had a chance to feel, because I was so inundated with the logistics of taking care of her. So of taking care of what she wanted. But it never really opened up like how I wanted to grieve for her and how I wanted to grieve during that process. So I remember then when Sal, you like helped guided us to, because after the Twitch situation and we had to re-record, I remember I was like, oh, I'm like reading this with much more, um, not necessarily confidence, but just like much more groundedness. And when you were talking about how, Tracy, you feel like you want to be more vocal about it, that's how I feel about people. That's how I feel about like me wanting to not be so scared about talking about my mom passing, because that's how I remember her. That's how I remember. That's how I remember how to be in our culture. That's how I remember to like be in our lives. That's how I remember to, that we have this relationship that was shifting and changing, and that I don't want to forget her. And so it was kind of interesting. It was crazy because I think that for a long time growing up, me and my mom had the like really really hard relationship. Like there were years that we didn't talk to each other, and I think that yeah, her passing really, it made it, her physical shifts made her shift mentally. And so I noticed her shifting. I noticed her like being less judgmental, being like less discriminating, um, being a lot more happy. And so that's what, you know, that's not that I don't want to forget what was really hard, and those are the things I want to shift in my relationship and in how I want to move forward. But I also, I think I want to remember, yeah, I want to remember that relationship, and also not be afraid to talk about something that is so normal, or that something that is so like foundational to like our human experience. And to be Viet, and it's like more than okay to be Viet about it, and more than okay to be queer about it too.
Mhm.
I wanted to add something, and it's just like hearing both of you process the deaths of your loved ones, of your mom and your dad. It's really like a really beautiful way to see, because like you created your art in film formats, right? The medium of film, and with that, like you said, your mom passed in 2018. You filmed this last year, and it's still circulating, and it's still impacting people. So it has its like life of its own. So it's
Mhm.
just this beautiful, like, I don't want to say contradiction, but like this wholesome of like death, planting the seeds of creating this art, and then it's having its life of its own, and you're continuing, memorializing, honoring, and all of that. So it's beautiful to see you both lean into that process. So thank you for that.
When turning our traumas into art that live on forever.
The
Yeah.
artist.
Yeah, I got a lot of comments that night. And then like in the weeks after, like people were just like sobbing, like just people who were just like, oh my God, hi, I didn't realize I was gonna cry that night. I didn't know I was gonna like have to face the things that are happening in my parents and the like the parent and my parents like aging and dying. And I just think that I want to create, yeah, I think it's helpful to create more normalized safe spaces for folks, for us to be able to process things that just happen naturally. And I don't want to, yeah, especially for me, especially as a queer person who like grew up with thoughts of like, oh my God, I'm going to totally separate from my parents. I don't want, like there were just times where I felt like I was like, oh my God, I'm either going to be abandoned or I'm going to abandon myself from this relationship. And to now, like I think for me, making that time to be with my mom and take care of her and remember the recipes and the stories, like that is something that I think that in my healing journey, I don't really see that much generally, like I just see, but I think it's been cool to know that there are more of us who like want to have a relationship with our families. And what do we do when, like, what does the nurturing and what is the caregiving and care receiving, what does that look like as our parents age? And I don't really have that many examples because there's not that many of us who have had passing parents. And so I just want to, yeah, I think that hopefully more of us can, yeah, like create, like more create
Like
assurance,
normalize. Yeah.
yeah, normalize it, assurance, affirmations that like that death is a natural thing, and there are rituals and there are practices to help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether or not they serve you, because sometimes the people who are ostracized from their family, this might not be a safe process of grief and death for them, and that's okay. And I always think about that when I share my story, like this is just my story, and I understand that some people don't have access to their families in this way or their biological parents in this way, and that's complicated too, and that's okay to talk about and feel complicated about, because yeah, my story is definitely complicated in its own way. Yeah, I could talk about this for a long time. Yeah, we should do it again over dinner.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
At Sal's mama's house. All right. Should we wrap because of time?
Yeah, yeah, maybe one more round. Like where are we at now? What are we thinking about in terms of our healing and practice for the future? Yeah. I feel like Tracy, you're saying how you're still waiting
Oh.
earlier. You feel like you're still waiting.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I was joking with my friends, like I could probably make a waiting for dad part 2. Where is my healing now? I feel like everyone's been asking me, like, are you taking care of yourself? I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to take care of myself? Like it's like impossible. I'm taking care of this whole human's life. That's what it feels like. I'm taking care of my dad's life right now. And sometimes it feels like his life or death is in my hands. Like I make one wrong move, I give him the wrong medicine, or I, choose the wrong, there's just so much that I don't know of what I'm doing, and so much at risk because of his condition that like all my tendencies of caretaking have like exponentially are like in my face. Like I'm not taking care of myself. And so in this process of healing, like I almost feel like I don't have inspiration for that right now because I'm such in crisis mode. But like your invitation to talk about it today, I was like, I've been going to back hospital shifts, but I want to make time for this right now because I want to process it in the moment, like how raw it is for me. And it's like become so raw that I can just talk about it like in a numb way. And then one day I'll probably look back on this and like kind of see where I'm at. So I feel like documenting the process right now, it's healing. Like I've been posting on Facebook, my reflections. I've been checking with folks, people who call me and like check up on me. Like, I think those are the moments where like it will help me archive, just like my films, archive like my process. And then one day I'll look back and see how I was feeling, how my dad was feeling, and kind of remember my dad through how I was feeling, you know, because right now it's just so like get through every day, one day at a time.
You want to go high?
Yeah, I think I totally, well, first I'll share, I totally relate. Like I think um I definitely wouldn't have been able to write and film and do all those things for my piece like around the time my mom passed, and I felt like the circle was such a timely moment to be able to do all that. And so I just want to, yeah, I mean, I want to like thank you for being here and being, vulnerable to share. And I think that, um, yeah, if it's anything I needed at that time, to a time to process with people. So I'm glad that we can be there with you and for you. So and I think for me, I mean, that was a really intense time for me. And so I think I've been I'm wanting to change it up. And so I've been writing soft erotica and thinking about like what is queer Viet pleasure and sensuality. And so I've just kind of just been playing with different love scenarios and lover scenes. And so my last one was about, for example, two lovers who had just transitioned, like bodily transition, and then they're rediscovering their bodies, their new bodies for the first time. But it's very like eco, like they're like skinny dipping one moment in the Yuba, and the next moment they're like mud bathing under the full moon in the Mekong. So I kind of just like go everywhere um, and then write about it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. How about you, Sal?
So excited for that erotica. Yes. What am I doing for my the question was like, what am I doing for healing and what am I up to now? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Healing, going to therapy has been always been grounding. Having chosen family to like vent to. Cooking, but that's been like up and down. I think what I'm wrapping up some like personal projects with that I filmed with my that Tracy and Leon helped me film with my mom, cooking like 3 dishes with her, and this was like the first time I've actually intentionally cooked with her. So looking to wrap that up by editing.
When you getting it done? When are you getting it done?
I gotta fix up my
Accountability. Tell the whole world when the deadline is. When is the release date?
I'm feeling attacked right now. Hopefully very soon. So I'm hoping to do it. I definitely it'll be done by Virgo season because that's
Yeah, around the
usually.
corner. And your birthday's in a month, so you have a month.
Thank you. Yeah, it will get done. I said what I said. I said what I said. So yeah, so really excited to like close that loop and potentially start. I want to do a camping one where we're doing like Vietnamese dehydrated food out in nature.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't tell you this. I mean, I talked about it high level, but I was with Leon and I was like, we're gonna do this because I'm gonna be in nature. And that was
Yes. Yes. I just made huteu, so I can like share some tips. I'll share the
ooh,
next
hell
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Wait, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kai, for initiating this conversation. This is really cool to hear the behind the scenes of both of your stories and for us to be in space, virtual space again.
Likewise, likewise.
For weaving it all together, Sal. That's what I know. That's like a behind the scenes labor of love.
Absolutely.
QTViệt Circle.
Gotcha.